You have probably read Psalm 91 during sickness, during fear, during difficult nights. Maybe someone even told you to pray it every morning for protection. But what if I told you there is a reason this psalm has comforted believers for over 3,000 years, and it has almost nothing to do with what most people think? Because Psalm 91 was never written as a magic prayer. It wasn't written to promise a life without danger. It was written for people who were already surrounded by danger. Hidden inside the original Hebrew are words so powerful that once you understand them, you will never read this psalm the same way again. One single Hebrew phrase near the end completely changes the meaning of God's protection, and most Christians have never noticed it. So today, we are going to walk through Psalm 91, verse by verse, word by word, discovering what the original language reveals. And by the end, you may realize God has been protecting you in ways you never even recognized. Let's begin not with angels, not with promises, but with a place almost no one talks about. Before Psalm 91 became one of the most quoted chapters in the Bible, it was born in a world filled with uncertainty, danger, and fear. This was not a peaceful song written for people living comfortable lives. It was a declaration of faith for those who faced death, war, disease, and enemies every single day. Unlike many of the Psalms, Psalm 91 does not identify its author. Some scholars believe it was written by David because its language closely resembles the confidence David expressed throughout his life. Others believe Moses wrote it, connecting it to Psalm 90, which is explicitly titled A Prayer of Moses, the Man of God. Since the earliest Hebrew manuscripts do not name the author, the Bible leaves the question open. What remains clear is that the message of Psalm 91 speaks with timeless authority, regardless of who first penned its words. To understand the psalm, we must first step back into the world of ancient Israel. Life in biblical times was unpredictable. Cities had walls because enemy armies could appear without warning. Travelers crossed deserts where robbers hid among the rocks. Wild animals such as lions and bears roamed the countryside. Diseases could spread through villages with no medical treatment available. A single drought could threaten an entire nation with famine. Every sunrise carried uncertainty. In that world, protection was not taken for granted. Every family understood what it meant to depend completely on God's care. The Israelites also lived under the covenant God established with them. They had witnessed his miraculous deliverance from Egypt, his provision in the wilderness, and his victories over powerful nations. Their history constantly reminded them that their greatest security was never military strength or political alliances. It was the presence of the Lord. This background gives remarkable depth to Psalm 91. The psalm does not promise that believers will never face danger. Instead, it reveals that God's presence is greater than every danger. Many Bible scholars believe Psalm 91 was closely connected to worship in the temple. The temple represented God's dwelling place among his people. Those who entered its courts came seeking mercy, forgiveness, and protection. The opening words, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High," immediately bring to mind the sacred presence of God, where only those who trusted him found true refuge. The phrase Most High comes from the Hebrew name El Elyon, emphasizing God's supreme authority over every earthly kingdom and every spiritual power. To the Israelites, this title declared that no king, empire, plague, or enemy stood above the Lord. Throughout Israel's history, they repeatedly experienced God's supernatural protection. During the Exodus, the blood of the Passover lamb shielded their homes from judgment. In the wilderness, God led them by a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire at night. He fed them with manna from heaven and brought water from the rock. Again and again, God proved himself to be their refuge. These historical memories echo throughout Psalm 91. Every promise points back to a God who had already demonstrated his faithfulness. The imagery in the psalm would have been instantly recognizable to its original audience. A fortress was more than a symbol, it was often the only place of safety when enemy armies attacked. A shield was not decorative, it stood between a soldier and certain death. A bird sheltering its young beneath its wings was a familiar picture of tender protection. These were everyday realities transformed into spiritual truths. The New Testament gives Psalm 91 even greater significance. During Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, Satan quoted verses from this psalm, urging Jesus to throw himself from the pinnacle of the temple. Yet Jesus refused to misuse God's promises, teaching that Scripture must never be twisted to justify presumption or pride. This moment reminds us that Psalm 91 is an invitation to trust God, not to test Him. Over the centuries, believers have turned to Psalm 91 during wars, epidemics, persecution, natural disasters, and personal suffering. Missionaries carried it into dangerous lands. Soldiers memorized it before battle. Families prayed it during times of illness. Its enduring power lies not in superstition, but in its unwavering testimony that God remains faithful in every generation. When we read Psalm 91 today, we are joining countless believers across thousands of years who discovered the same truth. Circumstances change, kingdoms rise and fall, dangers come and go, but the Lord remains the unshakable refuge of those who place their trust in Him. Understanding this historical setting allows us to read the psalm not merely as beautiful poetry, but as a living declaration of confidence in the God who has always been and always will be the protector of His people. One of the most comforting promises in all of Scripture is found near the heart of Psalm 91. It is a promise so powerful that it has encouraged believers through wars, persecution, sickness, and uncertainty for thousands of years. Yet it is also one of the most misunderstood passages in the Bible. The psalm says, "For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." At first glance, these words sound almost unbelievable. Does God truly assign angels to protect His people? Are angels constantly watching over those who trust Him? To answer those questions, we have to step back into the world of ancient Israel and examine what these words meant to the people who first heard them. The Hebrew word translated as command is tzava. It is not a casual suggestion or a polite request. It is the language of a king issuing orders to his army. In ancient Israel, when a king gave a command, his soldiers obeyed without hesitation. There was no debate, no delay, and no uncertainty. This means that the angels do not act independently. They do not decide whom to protect based on their own judgment. They move because God Himself commands them. Their authority comes entirely from Him. Now consider the word angels. In Hebrew, the word is malach, which literally means messenger. Throughout the Old Testament, angels appear as God's servants carrying out His will. Sometimes they deliver messages, sometimes they guide His people, sometimes they bring judgment. Other times they provide protection in ways that humans cannot even see. Think about Jacob as he fled from his brother Esau. Alone in the wilderness, he dreamed of angels ascending and descending between heaven and earth. At that lonely moment, God revealed that heaven was far closer than Jacob realized. Remember Elisha and his servant when an enemy army surrounded the city. The servant panicked because he saw only soldiers with horses and chariots. But Elisha prayed, "Lord, open his eyes." Suddenly the servant saw the mountains covered with heavenly horses and chariots of fire. The greater army had been there all along. The servant simply could not see it. That is often how God works. His protection is real even when it is invisible. The psalm says, "God commands His angels concerning you." That small phrase carries enormous weight. It reminds us that God's care is personal. He is not protecting humanity in general while overlooking individuals. He knows every believer by name. The God who numbers the stars also knows every step of your journey. The next phrase is equally important: to guard you in all your ways. The Hebrew word for guard is shamar. This is one of the richest words in the Old Testament. It means to watch over, preserve, protect, keep safe, and carefully attend to something precious. The same word is used when God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden to keep it. It is used for shepherds watching their sheep through the night. It is used repeatedly to describe God watching over Israel. This is not the picture of someone glancing in your direction occasionally. It describes constant, attentive care. But notice something many people overlook. The psalm does not say God removes every obstacle from your life. It says He guards you in all your ways. There is a significant difference. The promise is not that believers will never experience hardship. Throughout Scripture, faithful men and women faced imprisonment, persecution, storms, illness, and even martyrdom. Yet through every trial, God's purpose remains secure. Sometimes His protection means preventing danger. Sometimes it means giving strength in the middle of danger. Sometimes it means bringing us safely through what should have destroyed us. The focus is always God's faithful presence, rather than a life free from suffering. Then comes one of the most beautiful images in the psalm. They will lift you up in their hands. This is a picture of extraordinary care. Imagine a parent gently lifting a child over rough stones on a dangerous path. The child still travels the road, but loving hands help him avoid unnecessary harm. The following phrase says, "so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." In biblical times, travel was dangerous. Roads were uneven, rocky, and often crossed steep mountain passes. A simple fall could leave a traveler stranded miles from help. For the original audience, this was not symbolic language alone. It described everyday life. Yet, even here, the stone represents more than a physical obstacle. Throughout Scripture, stones often symbolize unexpected difficulties, hidden dangers, and moments that threaten to derail our journey. God's promise is not merely about protecting our feet, it is about preserving our walk with Him. This promise became especially significant during Jesus' temptation in the wilderness. Satan quoted these very verses, urging Jesus to throw himself from the pinnacle of the temple. If God's angels truly protected him, Satan argued, then surely they would rescue him. But Jesus immediately recognized the deception. Satan quoted the promise while deliberately ignoring an important phrase. He left out the words, "in all your ways." The protection described in Psalm 91 belongs to those who walk in God's ways, not to those who deliberately place themselves in danger to force God to perform a miracle. Jesus answered by quoting Scripture, "You shall not put the Lord your God to the test." His response teaches us a timeless lesson. Faith is trusting God. Presumption is demanding that God prove Himself. They are not the same. Psalm 91 calls us to trust, not to manipulate God. As we continue through Scripture, we discover that angels often work quietly behind the scenes. An angel shut the mouths of lions for Daniel. An angel opened prison doors for Peter. An angel strengthened Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane before the cross. Again and again, God sent heavenly servants exactly when they were needed. Most of the people involved had no idea what God was doing until afterward. Perhaps that is true in your own life. How many accidents have you never experienced because God intervened? How many dangers were quietly turned away before you even knew they existed? How many prayers were answered through circumstances you thought were ordinary? We simply do not know. One day in eternity, we may discover that heaven was far more active in our lives than we ever imagined. The promise of Psalm 91 is not meant to make us obsessed with angels. The focus is never the angels themselves. The focus is the God who commands them. The angels are servants. God is the protector. Their strength reflects His power. Their obedience reflects His authority. Their presence reminds us that heaven is never far away. When fear whispers that you are alone, Psalm 91 answers with a powerful truth. You are never walking by yourself. The God who rules over heaven has not forgotten you. His eyes remain fixed upon your path. His purposes remain unshaken, and His heavenly hosts stand ready to accomplish His will. Whether you see their work or not, the Lord is always watching, always guiding, and always guarding those who place their trust in Him.